welcome everyone to Rainforest Ambitions. My name is Leah Dollar-Olmos, and I'm the Global Engagement Coordinator at Rainforest Partnership. Today, we have a very, very special session for you guys, titled From Ambition to Action, Launching Startups for the Forest. So today we'll be hearing from a wide variety of speakers all around the world, their experiences with starting up. And hopefully you'll be able to leave with some key tips and key actions that you can apply to whatever your venture is, for the forest. So I'm going to go ahead and kick it off to our panelists for them to introduce yourselves. Adam, why don't you get started?
Thank you, Leah. So yeah, hi everyone. My name is Adam. I'm the Climate Dialogue Advisor at We Don't Have Time, which is the largest social network for climate action. So we're channeling the power of social media to enable climate action. Maybe I'll leave it at that and then I can get into it more later.
I guess I'll jump in and kick it around and give it over to you, Jan.
Hello, I'm Jan Lemuel. I'm based in Singapore. After 2 decades in corporate, I decided to change my angle of attack, and I'm helping startups, impact startups, to actually deploy. And the way we do that is that we create programs of collaboration between what we call an initiator, which will be a local NGO or even governmental organization that wants to tackle a specific issue. We combine them with an innovation, with the startups, and create an acceleration project long-term of those two, where they're both tied by the success of the other, and we bring in every kind of other expertise needed to achieve that from all over the world, basically. And we focus on the rainforest, the ocean, and also urban life and everything related to consumerism and fighting single-use plastic and this kind of topics. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Eric.
Hey, Kristen, thanks for having me. My name is Eric Wilburn. I head of business development for Gorongosa National Park in Mozambique, which is supporting all of our revenue generating enterprises. We have coffee rainforest. We're working on a lot of carbon projects, ecotourism, kind of all of the above. I'm wearing these brand new blue light blocking glasses that you guys can let me know if they are on point or not. But very, very grateful to join this group and talk about our experience on the ground in Mozambique.
Great, thank you. And Pierre.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pierre Elias, and I am in Papua New Guinea, the third largest rainforest in the world, which has an equal amount of diversity with the Amazon. So out of putting my camera, I've got a few noisy friends, but I thought it was appropriate with the rainforest theme. C5 is a locally owned Papua New Guinean startup. We have developed a private blockchain to do a verification of the forest, and we are open source. So if there's anyone keen to collaborate, we're most welcome.
And Pierre, would you mind clarifying for those who may not be super clear on it, what blockchain is?
That's a very good point. The way I describe it, it's a block. It's a chain of blocks, each blocks representing a particular stakeholder. So in our case, when I describe it, you have the farmers, coffee farmers, you have the buyers, and you have the subnational government. And typically when you put the three of them, they are often referred as unlikely allies. So for our forest area, as much each of them can achieve together, which by default is not straightforward. So by putting blocks together into a chain, every information is shared and cannot be tampered or modified, because it's everyone in that chain gets the information, and if you were to change it, you would have to change it in all three locations within the same second, which you can't at the moment with the capacity of the computing power. So it's just a technology way to make sure people get to deliver against what they've committed.
Thank you. And not with us yet, but joining in a bit is Oliver Utney, founder of Care Solar, which is the first electric riverboat system in the Amazon. So he'll be joining us in like 20 minutes. And I am Kristen Owen. I'm the co-founder and COO of a company called Do Stuff Media. We are a network of locally focused media properties, so slightly different industry. And I'm also a board member for Rainforest Partnership. So this panel is for people who are early on in their founding journey or potentially just considering whether they want to found their own business. So the questions are going to take us back to start with to those very early days, starting with like what led you to the decision to create a business founded on climate and deforestation in the first place. And how about we start with you, Jan?
Thank you. I was, like I said, I was for 20 years in corporate with always the angle of trying to do things differently in the way those industries are run. To name them, oil and gas. I was in aerospace and there was in aluminum, not great industry. But like my dad tried to do before me as an engineer, his principle was to say there are bad industries, and if we let them run by bad guys, it will be terrible. So it might as well be engineers that have a purpose and protection of nature to take care of that. And myself, after 20 years, I kind of started becoming I was exhausted and and not convinced that I would see any positive outcome through the rest of my professional life, and that a lot of business models were not based on any source of purpose or impact, so it'd be very hard and long to transform them. So I decided to change and change my strategy. And I'm also a business angel, so that's the angle I decided to have, and try to help the new generation build the new companies instead of trying to transform the old companies, I would say. And the angle on rainforest, obviously, like I said, I consider the two lungs of the planet, rainforests and oceans. And I try to focus also what I call the cancer of the lung, which is urban life, consumerism, and everything that drives the damage to the others. Initially, the rainforest, I started with that because I was working with an NGO in Brazil, in the Xingu territory, and focusing on creating local economies and trying to find all kind of ways, including the indigenous people, to protect the forest. Basically by saying if you can have a local economy and value better 1 square meter of forest than 1 square meter of corn, well, you already started to win kind of a fight on deforestation. So I was in this through a friend that I was supporting for an NGO, and that's how it all started.
Awesome, thanks. Same question for you, Adam. How did you end up in the deforestation and climate field?
Yeah, so the origin of We Don't Have Time is actually very much connected to the election of Donald Trump in 2016, because it was a kind of a wake-up call for our founders that this issue of climate change is not something that's gonna basically be solved on its own. It's not something that world leaders are gonna choose by themselves to solve for without any outside pressure. So that's kind of where the whole idea started, that we need a platform where people can come together and really raise their voices, contribute with their solutions, talk about, and also, of course, hold our world leaders accountable for what they should do and what they're not doing. And it became very clear in a very early stage that one of the most effective ways of doing just that is through social media. But the established social media they're not focused on this issue. Basically, they're not focused on solving climate change. They're focused on far different ways of improving the world and making a profit. So that's where kind of the idea of building a new social network from the ground up, where anyone can go in and contribute with their ideas and their solutions and their opinions on certain actions that world leaders and business leaders take. And especially then, of course, related to climate change, so that there's a dedicated space that's specifically designed to create action, but also utilizes the power of social media. So that's really where the whole idea came from. And it's very much based on the idea also to basically promote one activity, and then a lot of people can go together to support that activity. And that's how we create action and create change, basically.
And follow-up question to that, I think a lot of people listening, they have ideas, but they don't really know how to take that like next step into turning that idea into some sort of action to get the business moving forward. Do you have any examples of how that manifested? We don't have time.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about like finding someone who thinks you have a good idea, and then really holding on to them, making them your ally, and basically doing it together with them. It's all about doing it together with the people who think that your idea is good, of course. So I think that was very much part of the success in the early days of We Don't Have Time, to really find those who agree with you and then do it together with them instead of trying to compete, basically.
Cool. Eric, same question for you. Why deforestation and climate change?
Yeah, so my dad actually wrote the cap and trade bill for Washington State that just passed, which is very exciting. So I grew up with a lot of environmental policy in my house, and joined the Peace Corps coming out of undergrad, and was sent to Mozambique. So that kind of started my work about a decade ago in Mozambique. Have always worked in community conservation, and it just so happens in the last few years that carbon credits, for example, might be the best mechanism for financing communities to get out of abject poverty that we've seen in a very long time. And it just so happens that it protects and restores nature as well. So a lot of our work in Gorongosa National Park is looking at how can we support communities to protect and restore nature. Livelihoods are a fundamental component of that. So we pretty much talk with all of our communities. We've got about 400,000 smallholder farmers across 2.5 million hectares, and say, what do you want to do? And we look at what can we do with them. And then we start up businesses that are owned by the trust that funds the national park. So anytime that business profits, the funds flow right back into the trust and right back to the people on the ground. So we're essentially trying to create a hybrid kind of direct, financial model in this one region, and catalyze a green regional economy that brings 400,000 people out of abject poverty. So I just kind of have followed where I've been asked to serve in my career in general. It hasn't been very intentional, and have found myself in a pretty interesting place. So I'll just say that sometimes taking your hands off the steering wheel can lead you down some interesting pathways. Thanks.
Thank you. And Pierre.
Yeah, it's always interesting to hear everyone's story and journey. So I worked for 15 years with a startup called Procter & Gamble, which I guess you know, in the US, and a very comfortable career. And I chose to take a leap of faith. I think that's a word which is going to come a few times in those discussions. I came to Papua New Guinea about 10 years ago. I've been coming back and forth for many years. At the start, it was a software, Canadian software I was working with, doing a social and environment impact for mining oil and gas. And at some point, 2017, I got a phone call from one of my ex-clients, and he said, I want to use your software, but for a forest. And that's when I said, wow, okay, very interesting. I can't think of any software that can do that. And building on what Eric said, our project is 1.5 million acre. One thing which is truly specific about Papua New Guinea that I believe will resonate with you is that it has, it's a bit like the US. It has not 50 states, but it has 1,000 states. And the island is the size of France, if you were to pick a comparison. But it has 1,000 distinct languages. What it means is 1 language out of 5 globally are spoken here. And if you look at Europe, there are 8 main languages routes, which you can trace any language back to. And here it's 30. The reason is that the forest is very dense and there's lots of taboo, and you just simply can't walk from one point to another for many reasons. So when you see both the biodiversity and the social language being just one example, I just thought of having a go. So we can talk about the life of an entrepreneur later on, but when the purpose is big enough, you might end up taking a leap.
In your case, how did you go from idea to those first steps towards action of putting the company together?
Well, I gave a phone call to my brother and I said whether he can chip in 10,000 US. And he picked up the phone. But at the time he had no idea. And with that, we got a few more anecdotes. But one thing which maybe is of interest, because I've had a chance to give a point of view in other forums, we are really a social startup. And we mean it by this. At no point we talk about exit strategy and other such popular terms. And we are locally owned. And through the journey, I met 2 local entrepreneurs, which, guess what? They are far better entrepreneurs than us in terms of the rainforest. Obviously, there's an element of coaching. There is an element of remoteness for which you've got to go and be on the ground. But you definitely get attention. I guess Eric also, sorry, I'm picking a lot on his example, but people that notice that you're doing social stuff with traditional communities, which ultimately, this is our opportunity from at least where I'm coming from. So these are a few hints in terms of, the second you do locally owned, social, open source, there's some people that are happy to ask you further questions.
Great, awesome, thank you. One of my favorite things to talk about is early on, what were some examples of just like key challenges or biggest areas of worry or discomfort that kind of plagued you at the outset? Starting with you, Adam.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the biggest discomfort was, the biggest worry was that we really from the get-go took a position where we really challenged the way things were done. We started in 2018 in a space kind of where, I mean, climate action wasn't that obvious. Even talking about the climate crisis wasn't that obvious as it might be now, and there was a lot of worry around challenging the status quo too much. Are we even going to be taken seriously, and so on and so forth. But we, as I said before, we held on to our allies. We really found partnerships where we could. And as the years went on, now into 2021, we don't even need to look for allies anymore. They're actually coming to us because the kind of landscape has changed so much. The discourse has changed so much. Now it's something that companies and organizations actively want to partake in. This kind of work that we do with maintaining an open dialogue about climate action is something that companies actually want to do. So it's so different now compared to then for our situation, because it's we don't feel like we're challenging the status quo anymore. We more feel like we're riding on a wave that's already kind of in motion, so to speak.
Thank you. Jan, same question, early challenges and discomforts and worries.
Yeah, sure. That was before doing the leap of faith, as Pierre mentioned. I was in corporate for 20 years with a great career, meaning great money, a lot of money. And there was only one thing I was sure, is that the day I make the decision, this will stop. The money will stop flowing in every month, whatever happens. And when you're an entrepreneur, it's not because you're doing well that the money is coming, right? In corporate, you can manage your way through. There's more tolerance, up and downs. That's the constant thing. It's coming, especially if it's a huge company. So that was the thing where it was a fight within me over the years, and the more you wait, the more you build your little hamster wheel, and golden plated hamster wheel where you run, and it gets more difficult to break it as it goes. And the help came from the people around me, my girlfriend or my wife, that was pushing and on saying, hey, whatever happens, anyway, there's one thing that's, I'm sure that if you don't try it, you'll regret it all your time. So it's the time to do it. You're 45. It's not too late, but what's sure is that you have to try it. So it was more the jump, really, the final push for me. And when I had all the doubts, came from the people around me, either people that, my family, but also people where I value the opinion, and I easily recognize that there are more competent than me on certain topics, and that when you have those kind of people that gives you the confidence and the push, and that's why I solved it. After that, when the decision was made about running the project and everything, I felt it much more easy, in the way where those are good topics, right? Nice topics, and there's a lot of goodwill about people you meet, trying to help you in any way they want to do. You have to sort your way between it, but there's a lot of people that try, as minimum, to try to connect you to people, or trying to bring something to the table, which was very different from the corporate world I was knowing about, which more competitive and everything. There's still competition, but I was surprised by that. But so then when a jump was made, it was much more easy, and actually I'm losing my doubt as I go. It went more sure for me, and there was something sure that I would never be able to go back. Actually, go back. I have to find another way.
Right. Thank you. Eric.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenge, I mean, a lot of the challenges that we work with are very different from if you're starting up, a tech company or a social venture somewhere. And I think the biggest challenge is just talking to communities, and we maybe sound like a little bit of a broken record here, but talking to communities on the ground and understanding what is really going to make it work. Because I love all of the different rainforest tech ventures that are popping up now. I think it's fantastic and really necessary. But at the end of the day, it's the people on the ground that are on the front lines of protecting and restoring nature that you've got to be understanding, listening to, and developing tools that ultimately will get down to that person. And be thinking about if you're developing a tool that's supposed to help a corporate assess and determine where to invest in their carbon offsets, how are you designing that tool such that it ensures equitability for these groups on the ground? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we'd faced, is how to create those structures, and also financially. How are you looking at the benefits sharing plan for all these? If you buy your coffee, what percentage of that coffee bean goes back to the farmer on the ground who's growing that coffee, who's planting the native rainforest saplings alongside of it, or who's protecting a rainforest? So really understanding what money is going where, and looking for transparency. And as you are starting up a business or whatever it is that you embark on doing, the question that I always ask myself is, where is the money going? The money that we're getting, where is it going? And are we being fully transparent with anybody who's buying our product or with anybody who's using our service, how that money flows? So I would say our biggest challenge is just honestly being honest with ourselves, and making sure that we're holding ourselves to a standard of transparency that we want to see from other entities as well.
Thank you. Pierre.
Yeah, actually, that's it's very interesting to listen to others. I feel it's time for me to drop a small anecdote in a second, but the challenge is being on the ground. Because obviously, like you have a family, I've got two teenage boys, and I've spent 6 of the last 10 months in the jungle. Now, one thing I tell them is just do stuff, and then people can comment about what you've done, whether it's good or bad, or what's the point of view. But as long as you've done it, that's a good step. And this is just one provocative statement: is I love criminals. Different intent, but the work rate when you are on the ground is insane. I was with one of my brothers here. His name is Samuel in the Papua New Guinea forest. And he was working at night with a headlight, putting wood into his coffee drying machine. Problem is that the machine was very old and the pipe cost $100 to replace. So he's chucking more wood. Second, to take his seeds back to the village, a bag cost $2 plus the ride is another $3 for each bag. So he let a lot of his coffee get rotten. That's one hand. So these are the good crop, like Eric said. These are the good crop. The one you want to support. The bad crop are the usual suspects, oil palm and mining oil and gas, sometimes I call it, in that bucket. So how can we switch from the bad crops to the good crops? And those criminals are playing an important role because they would be the one working 24/7, coming to your farm, giving you pretty much nothing, but guess what? It's still some cash. And because they keep giving you very little, what you do is that you clear the forest. So to close on my good brother Samuel, he has 2 hectares. I was with him a few weeks ago, and he was cutting another 3 hectares next to his house. So he was clearing as we were talking. And I said, look, if we were to give you some ammunition, some proper grain, seeds and tools and equipment and supply chain, I said, oh, of course, I want my forest to grow back. This belongs to the family. This is our traditions. So I just want to leave that with you. 2 thoughts, which is a challenge, is being on the ground seems a big effort for all of us, maybe a bit more comfortable from where we are sitting, while at the same time, criminals are just driving as we talk and going to get items from the forest from our fellow warriors, the farmers.
Thank you. This question, interesting follow-up to that. The theme here, obviously, of where do you find people and partners and allies? What are how did you find those in the early days, if you haven't spoken to it yet? And then what are other unique challenges to finding the right people and partners in this space versus other types of industries? Eric. Mix it up.
Yeah. It is, I mean, in terms of rainforest protection, there's a lot of different actors at play, right? So you're looking at the value chain of the vast majority of global companies are affecting forests. So pretty much any industry is linked back to forest protection in some way, not to mention the emerging carbon market industry, which is what I primarily focus on at this point, which is incredibly complicated with lots of buyers, lots of investors, lots of developers. And I think the biggest challenge is who is aligned with your mission and your values, right? Because we get potential partners that reach out to us all the time to say, we want to support X, Y, or Z, or we want to invest in this carbon credit project or that one. And we got to ask the question, well, why are you in it? Are you in it to make money? Are you in it to, X, Y, Z, or are you in it because you actually deeply care for protecting and restoring rainforests? And I think the biggest challenge is that it takes a long time often to figure that out. But more importantly, I would love to see more collaboration among groups that are on the ground, like Pierre and the thousands of entities on the ground around the world that are protecting and restoring forests to talk to each other and say, hey, who can we trust? You know, who have you guys been working with that it's been a good relationship, and better share that information. And I guess this might be a good time for me to plant a small seed that we're right now working on, what's called the Carbon Cooperative, which is a global network of actors, communities, organizations on the ground working on protecting and restoring forests, both terrestrial and marine ecosystems, to address this challenge of who are the partners that we can trust, you know, who's really in it for the same reasons that we are. So I'll invite anybody who is an actor on the ground who's interested in, you know, engaging in that community network. Feel free to reach out to me, and I can get you plugged into that. So maybe I'll drop my email in the chat and welcome any conversations. So I guess to that point, we need more sharing on who are the good partners out there.
Thank you. And yeah, definitely at the end, if everyone could share where folks can get in touch or find out more about your organization, that'd be great. Or now, really doesn't matter. Same question. Let's see, you, Pierre. I know you just spoke to this quite a bit, but if anything else to add.
Yeah. No, one tip maybe for is a point of view from where I'm sitting, but by being focused, actually it attracts similar-minded people. So project in Managalas, which is the name of the forest, Managalas. It's a livelihood program which has a biodiversity / carbon credit component. I think it's very profound, the concept of component, because people that are interested by rainforest, they are more interested to me around livelihood and whether our fellow warriors on the ground thrive. And then you bring some various ammunition. One of them is to buy their coffee or cocoa at a good price. Second would be to provide them with education around the broader agriculture point of view and consumerism warnings. And eventually the carbon / biodiversity credits become a component, a very important one, but it's second to livelihood. And through that, and maybe that's a timely point to, I think it's very close to partnership. We like to describe, we have 3 jungles in our project. We have the technology jungle where we belong, quite a few of us. We have the subnational or provincial jungle, as in the physical jungle. And third is the international jungle. And for that, in our project, we really, those 3 jungles have to overlap. And everyone's got his own skills. So in our team, it works very well, because if anyone was to pronounce the word technology, it would come back to us, C5. And for international engagement, we have the chance to have an organization called Resilient Landscape, which actually are the World Agroforestry Center, which is about 1,000 PhDs, both based in Nairobi, Kenya, and Bogor, Indonesia. So what those guys do a fabulous work on our behalf is to make sure when we have a partnership question, they pretty much tell us whether it's the right thing or not. So maybe my tip is, if you have I mean, it depends on everyone's skills, but we like to focus on technology, and we tend to field international collaboration to them in order to get the best of everyone's skills and time.
Awesome, thank you. Jan, any other recommendations for those early partners and allies?
The option we took on this one. So first, to access to them on the first question, how do you find them? It's still a confidential world, the world of impact and sustainability and technology and innovation. After over 2 years now that dedicate to my time, I really cross the same people already a lot. So it's not that of a big world. So to acquire the right partners, it goes pretty fast through hearsay, and that's how I got it. When I came back, when I left corporate, I decided to go and take 1 year off to understand what I'm going to do and understand what's going on the ground. And that's where I was close to the NGOs, and part of that journey was also to I sailed the Pacific on a boat, which gave me time to think about what I will do and work on this. Good thing on a boat is that you have time. The dangerous thing is that there's nobody to tell you that you're full of shit and trying to contradict you and trying to give you a different point of view. So as soon as I came back during a stop in Singapore, I started talking to my friends, and within 2 weeks, I already met like 80 people that I never knew before, just because people liked the story and wanted to connect me to this guy. So acquiring the right partners, I found it surprisingly easy. Of course, I'm in Singapore, right? I'm not. I'm already in the place where you have a lot of people and traffic. Huh? But so that was not that was not the main issue. Then when you start to execute and you actually look for partners, right? Because you need the right local representative or local specialist, the people in contact with the indigenous people. The option we took on that one was to say we don't want to do a collection of logos and just because I saw you or we just had a coffee, we're partners, right? That's not the angle I have. I'm an engineer and I like to go step by step and actually build things. And so the angle we took is that we try to find as little of a project as it can be, just to work together. So it's we're really focusing on starting small on everything we do, and then we can grow by replication. But even to build a partnership, just a small project, as ridiculous as hey, let's do a publication on this, or it's a way to start and initiate the conversation and actually build a partnership on something you're producing, right? And that's the way we did it, and that really helped us build bonds quickly with partners.
Awesome, thank you. Transition away from that for a moment to say hello to Oliver. Welcome. Would you like to just take a moment to briefly introduce yourself and your company?
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry, I couldn't join you all for the beginning. My name is Oliver Utney. I'm the founder of Cara Solar. We are building an electric transportation system in the Amazon in Ecuador that uses solar energy. And we are, yeah, just excited to be here. I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you for being here. So this next question, I do not know who all it applies to, so I apologize if I call you out and it doesn't, but at what point in your company's history did you seek out funding? And follow up to that is, where did you find it? Jan.
Oh, sorry, actually I raised the hand right before. I just wanted to illustrate back to a question you were asking before, where do you find the inspiration and the aha moment and where you see it? And I was waiting for Oliver to come, and he knows the story I'm going to say. He was material in me visualizing, and that's to illustrate how it can be simple and how you don't expect when you have your haha moment or, oh, that's what I wanted to do. But that was thanks to Olivier, actually, and to illustrate what we're saying about the need for technology locally, the issue about all the local players needing to collaborate together, and which is very difficult, especially when you're an NGO in the field, isolated. You don't have time, you don't have much money, and spending time to scout for different partnership and what does exist on the other side of the planet is very tough. And as I think it was Eric mentioned, now you start to have communities and platform where you can find that. And as Pierre was referring to the other platform to find expertise and everything. So that's getting organized, but in reality on a daily basis, it's pretty tough. And Oliver it was exactly that. We were in Brazil working in the Xingu reservation, and they had a lot of problems, and we helped them do the problem statement. Okay, where do we start? You have a big project of creating an institute there, and one of the issue was to have a way of transportation for goods and people when you create this local economy. And myself, I quickly heard about Oliver. We ran into each other through an investor network. I was in, I think, through Los Angeles, and we crossed during a summit in Los Angeles in 2019. And it took me basically 2 days to find a potential solution to the problem people are in Brazil. And Oliver is in Ecuador, and never heard about them. And for me, it took me 2 days being in Singapore through my network. And then there was other consideration of a potential market for application. And I quickly realized I went around the world on trying to solve local local projects problems. And I went around the world like in a few days, thanks to my network. And that's how I had the moment. I was like, that's what I want to do. I'd like to bring the power of a global network that I had through my career and history to all those local actions. And so, yeah, I wanted to thank again Oliver, because that he was material in me going like, yeah, that's what I want to do.
Nice. Very cool. All right, back to the funding question. Obviously, I don't, perhaps all of you have sought out funding, I'm not sure, but Adam.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, of course, we had to start finding funding very, very soon, because we were building something from the ground up, and that costs money. So, but the thing we did was that we actually, our first founding round was actually a crowdfunding. So we went through a crowdfunding platform and got a bunch of investors, like small investors, and we've actually kind of continued with that way of working for the rest. We keep doing funding rounds regularly to kind of keep going. And that's kind of been our concept, to really, as our investors, really bring in those who are not like the big investment firms or big venture capitalists. We've gone for the ones who are maybe smaller investors but are very engaged, and our investors are some of our greatest fans, actually. So it's definitely been, for us, it's definitely been looking for allies who also invest, instead of just going with those big players who invest just where they can get the most returns, basically.
Awesome, thank you. Pierre.
Yeah, we'll use your word, Adam, about allies. So in our case, it's a bit provocative and it's a bit confidential, but just sort of sharing with you is the two critical points in our purpose is to be a locally owned and a social startup. So we haven't asked for money straight away. Now, locally owned is a huge challenge. In Papua New Guinea, population is between 8 million and 12 million people. They don't know. 80% of businesses are foreign owned. The rest is a lot of traditional economy, livelihood. So to come and say we want to be locally owned, I mean, it's a big effort. And by the way, so one thing we did is, often the provincial government or local government, they have what's called a business arm, which is a way for them to make a bit of money, because what they get from central government is very little. And when you talk, I guess for all of you, you'll have experience about the business arm of government. It's very often a hotel, bus transport company, and a bit of construction, which makes, again, and our idea, which came true in this trip, is having a startup as part of the, and I took that idea from the First Nation of Canada, by the way, who are very advanced. And so now, yeah, C5 has 30% of its equity owned by the provincial government, which we gave away for free. Now, guess what? Every project that are coming in Papua New Guinea, we are fortunate to have the leading province out of 20 that has been championing forest, is going to go through us. So there's no funky presentation materials. There's just a forest and a lot of potential that will eventually become our funding. Again, we're social, locally owned, so we're not after the big numbers. But I think this business model to share equity, I don't like to say to give equity for free. It's just they give us the forest anyway. So is how you involve the traditional communities in your startup to remain locally owned and to keep your independence against maybe some more cliche type of investors. And I don't want to be simplistic.
Thank you. Oliver.
Hey, so we're a nonprofit. Probably puts us in a different category than some of your organizations. But let's see, our story with getting funding has been a long and trying and arduous journey. And I think there have been times when we were barely able to keep going. And now we're in the best financial situation we've been in our history, which is a different reality and really exciting. And I think that one of our bigger funders told me recently that they're really excited because the more they work with us, they realize that not only are we the organization that's been able to do what a lot of people have thought of and tried to do, which is make electric mobility and solar powered boats work in the Amazon, because it's an idea that actually a lot of people have had and tried to do. And they've been excited that not only were we able to make it work, which is kind of where most people haven't had success. It's just the conditions in the Amazon are really tough. But that our values really align with this funder's values, and that as they were discussing how lucky they feel that we can kind of tick those two boxes, they've realized that maybe they're actually one and the same. Maybe the reason that we've been able to make it work is because we share their values, which, in this case, they're referring to really putting the people and the training of people before the technology, kind of above. Our goal is not to design the best boat. Our goal is to have local teams that can take apart and rebuild the boat 100% and fix any aspect of the boat. That's more important. So that was a really cool thing for me to hear, because it's a reminder that it was by sticking with our values and by having really clear values that we actually were able to bring in the funding that we need. So yeah, thank you.
So we already covered this a bit, but it seemed like a good time to transition to ask you what some of the bigger pain points or challenges were as you were getting started with your endeavor.
I think we started with that with kind of the assumption that we were going to build like the perfect boat and have the perfect technology, and that everything would flow from there. And we just kept trying to, we kept learning the hard way that kind of there is no perfect design and something's always going to break. And that much more important than building something that's not going to break is having a plan for when it does break. So at the beginning, we would, often have a broken piece, and we would be waiting weeks or months to try to get a new motor or a new, whatever had broken, usually the motor. And then we, started using more simple kind of analog technology as opposed to like the most advanced, most digital technology. Motors that we knew how to fully take, that we knew how to, and that the manufacturer actually encouraged us to take apart so that you could change certain pieces inside of it, whereas a lot of technology has kind of the other approach, like a Mac, like they don't want you to take apart your Mac. And so finding equipment like that allowed us to get through those kind of choke points.
Cool, thank you. And then Eric, want to make sure that everyone hears from you too on the funding piece, where that came from for you.
Yeah, we're a little bit unique in Gorongosa in that a lot of our funding comes through multilateral, a lot of aid, working with a lot of embassies, And so, a lot of it is grants and going through that process, which can be a really good way to get even for-profit mission-focused endeavors off the ground. You kind of, especially in Mozambique, our coffee company, we had to subsidize that with grants out the gate. It wouldn't have been financially viable if we just immediately took on debt, for example, to get that project going. So, you got to make relationships and know the right people. And especially, if you're working in a country that you didn't grow up in, you need people on your team that grew up in that country and know exactly how things, or better than you, how things work in that country and who you need to talk with. So I think it's a lot of a collaborative effort with all different actors when it comes to the development finance piece. I'll just say briefly on the kind of scaling project side, again, there are a lot of new kind of impact investments and nature-based solution investment arms that are starting to come online right now. And what we are really looking at is, what are the expectations for returns, right? So a lot of the work that we're doing needs patient capital. And most of the venture capital out there is not structured to be patient. It's structured to have a Google pop up in 3 years and everybody gets 100x exit. So I think a lot of the work that actually needs to be done around fundraising is actually not us actively fundraising, but us actively advocating for our projects and helping people understand that you got to be a little bit more patient if you want a forest to grow, to get a return from that forest, than maybe normal approaches, or I won't say normal, but previous industries. So I think that's a pretty, if there's any investors on the call, being a little bit more patient with nature-based solutions is going to be key.
Thank you. Let's see, I know we're going to run out of time before I get to all the questions. So I'm trying to think of what is most useful. I guess just to hit on one of the high points. If there is, knowing what you know now, if there was anything you would have fundamentally done different as you were getting your business started, starting with you, Jan.
Actually, the answer to that one is a complementary point on the previous question about funding. And what I would have done different is believe more in my assumption on what I was comfortable with in the way I wanted to kick off the business. What I mean is that I had two options at the beginning. Either I could become a fund, raise money, and be my own fund, own VC, and invest in the startups I'm bidding with the methodology we've developed for the Living Labs. That's not the path I did want to go initially. Again, engineer, liking to do step by step and be sure of what I'm progressing. I was more into I wanted to go through the grassroots kind of bootstrapping way of doing consulting, having project to be able to self-fund and gain experience. And that's one of the hurdle I had at the beginning, right? The legitimacy. I came from the corporate world and I have all those guys that have been in the jungle for years or a specialist in this angle of attack of impact or whatever. So that was I wanted to take the long route for that. And but through all the discussion I had, it came back to people telling me, oh yeah, you could raise that many millions and that many millions. And then you're like, wow, I could do so much thing with that money. And it took me a while to try to process that. And I didn't understand why I was not feeling comfortable. And I just realized it was because, that was something I was not mastering and it was not the way for me to go. And so I came back to saying, no, we're going to bootstrap it. We're going to do several stages of growth. And for now, I choose this path. And what I would have done different on that one is to trust myself more and not lose several months in trying to see, let's go this way, and realizing I was not very comfortable with it. So, and the conclusion on that is what I often say is to startups that I advise on fundraising, and it's applicable to to any kind of fundraising. Anyway, there's no one size fits all anymore. You have every local reality or every kind of business need to involve some blended financing, and it can be through grants, it can be through equity. But the most important for me is an investor can be wrong in the startup he invests in. He can, because he's got a portfolio, there's a natural hedge. You cannot be wrong in choosing your investor because you're going to be stuck with him for a while. And it's often very hard to do because you need the money, right? And but that's something where you should not compromise in any kind of way. It's much more important for you to find the right guy, the right way, equity, dilutive, non-dilutive. It's more important for you to find the right guy than it is for him to find you, actually, and keep that in mind.
Awesome, thank you so much. Same question for you, Adam.
Yeah, so I mean, as a tech company and as a software company, there's always things we know now that we should have started developing a year ago. So I mean, there's always, yeah, I mean, there's a lot that could have been done differently that would have left us with another product. But at the same time, I feel like we decided where we wanted to go, and we kind of stuck on that path. And I think that's a good thing as well, that we didn't like switch too much. We were pretty adaptable, but we didn't like switch our path too much. So in a way, there's things we could have done differently, but I think what we want to do is just to really try to look forward and say, okay, so what's the next thing we can do? If we didn't do this, then what's the next thing we can do instead, for example? So yeah, we don't tend to dwell so much on the past, but of course we see what we could have done differently, but then try to adapt how we work in the future based on that, basically.
Yeah, that's pretty nice. How about you, Pierre? What would you have done differently?
Yeah, there is a question from Alexa. You want to address some of the questions, or I'm very happy to go in.
I think we have 15 set aside at the end for questions.
Okay, because it's very important about building a trusted relationship on the ground. Well, I think I'm not going to spend too much time. It's 5 a.m. and that's good when you join a call at 5 a.m. because you've doubted about your journey about just 5 times. So yeah, same story. We didn't operate in 2016 and 2019 just because. And another anecdote, I guess, also is someone said, "Oh, you're doing a software for the forest. Do you think it's the right time?" I said, "Well, I don't really care. We've been here for 6 years. We'll be there in 6 years." And so that's my twist.
Thank you. And Eric.
Hey, a quick repeat of the question.
No. Knowing what you know now, is there anything you would have fundamentally changed at the beginning when you were getting started?
Yeah, I mean, the Goringosa project has been functioning for longer than I've been a part of it. But I think some of the original founders would probably say, take impossible leaps. Because this was a landscape that was pretty much completely destroyed coming out of civil war in one of the poorest areas in one of the poorest countries in the world. And we've made unbelievable progress over the last 12 years. So I guess this isn't really something we would have done differently. I'm just glad that that original team said, we're going to commit to this landscape and we're going to do whatever we have to do to make it work. And I will say it was originally started by a philanthropist named Greg Carr. And I think, if there's any philanthropists listening in on this call, take the big risks, right? There's other money out there that can get the projects that are already working going. But in terms of philanthropic money, we really need people to take risks at this stage on the projects in the most difficult places. And I think philanthropic funds is primed for that. So I guess that's the brief note. But next call, I'll bring Greg on and he can give you a more in-depth answer.
Great, thank you. And Oliver, some questions to you.
I would have just been clear with myself about whether this is something I wanted to do for the medium and long term. I was always doing it month by month and then year by year. And I think if I had had a more long-term perspective, I would have been saner and happier along the way.
Yeah, good point. Last sort of like advice question. Are there any resources or tools or things you think that the audience should know about to help them kickstart their founding experience? I'll just kick it back to you, Oliver.
I mean, it's so general. You know, I guess be relentless and you know, try to find rich people, because I think a lot of times we kid ourselves by pretending that you know, that it's just a question of hard work, and so much about what goes forward and what doesn't go forward isn't about how hard the people who are working on it are working on it. And like in our experience, the fact that we're around today is not just a testament to like how great we are at doing what we're doing. It's because there were privileged people involved, and that's just like a fact that needs to be acknowledged more. I don't know if it's healthy. I don't know if it's good. I don't think it is good, but it's real.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Jan, same question. Which was, do you have any recommendations on resources, tools, or other advice?
Like Oliver said, it's very generic and there's no one topic, but generally speaking, I gotta say, I see an increase of good communities on any topic that starts to get organized, and that's the angle, trying to find the right one. That's what helped me a lot. Different group, like we just launched a group called Innovation for Sustainability Alliance, and it's all, when you look at the profiles of the people that are there, it really helped me when I have a question to have a quick answer. And so for me, there's no like one website or one framework you can apply and it's going to make it work. It's more all those platforms that give you access to expertise easier, and through your connection. So basically people in the end, that's for me, that's the main key.
Thank you. Adam.
Yeah, I'm just gonna chime into the choir here and say, basically similar to what Oliver, but also Jan said, that, I mean, just listening to both your investors, I think is a very good idea in an early stage, if you have any, just or potential investors, of course, just like listening to the people who are like, yeah, I mean, they're engaged and they're interested in you for a reason, so they will have good feedback and good resources for you. But I wouldn't say not only investors or the rich people, as you say, but also just engaged people in general. Like if you have, I think for us, that's working very much in the climate change, like consumer power sphere. I think just keeping an eye out on discussion forums where people talk about these issues and different solutions that different organizations present, I think it's been super healthy and very important to kind of like keep a pulse on the community that you're after all looking to provide to for in a way. So I think that's of course super important to really find key people in the community and listen to them.
Awesome, thank you. And Eric, anything to add there?
I would just briefly say that, as I've now just harped on the importance of philanthropy, there's also a lot of resources in the masses. And I think one of the things that gets me most excited is the democratization of opportunities to finance and support nature that are just starting, very nascent, but I think could play a huge role in getting resources kind of moving around the world to individual actors on the ground. And I think that's one of the things that I'm most excited about is, how do we create novel financial mechanisms that get funds to where they are needed most, and perhaps coming from people who wouldn't be your traditional institutional investor. I personally, I'd love to put money into something that would give me like a 3% return year on year. That could be my kids' education fund that brings back forests. I mean, I'd love to invest in that today. So I think I'm really excited about seeing more and more of those kind of financial products come online that get, funds to the places where they're needed most, like Papua New Guinea, like Mozambique, like all the other places, the Amazon. And so I think that's what I'm really looking forward to.
Awesome, thank you. And then Pierre, anything to add there?
No, I think at this point, I think it's, there's so many comments I heard on this one, so happy to
Cool.
get to the next question.
Yeah, let's go ahead and kick it to the question that you referenced from Alexa in the chat. And I guess now is a good time, call to the audience. I believe all questions are coming through the chat. If you would like to ask them of the panelists, I could be mistaken, but I think that's correct. So this one, just in case everyone can't see it, it seems like for most of you, your work is based in places that you're not from or grew up in. Can you speak about the challenges or the process of building a relationship with local communities there? And Pierre, if you want to start this one.
Yeah, so I will start with a disclaimer. Next month, I will celebrate my 25th marriage anniversary. But the analogy I find is there's only so much you can do at looking at people on a dating website and on Zoom. At some point you've got to maybe meet the person face to face. And I'm saying this because and there's so many great examples from you guys. So maybe the panelists, we've experienced this, but the time you spend on the ground, it's just so rewarding. Like there is a part of the forest I wanted to go. It took me 2 months. Now, when I got invited and all cleared, I was taken by the governor with his car. He asked me to drive it. I had the plate number was Provincial Administration 001. And having the driver and having the governor with me, I always make the analogy. His name is Gary, and he's the twin of The Rock, the actor. He's just 3 centimeters smaller. So you can argue about that or not. I don't. And so suddenly people said, okay, wow, this guy, if he's around, he must be someone we want to engage with. And then there is another part of the forest, and that's the 3rd time I come, which I'm meant to go, which even the governor can't go. And it's just taking so much time to get taboo and clearances, but I know I'll go soon, maybe in this trip, which is my month number 6, or I'll come back in August. But the more you get to spend time on the ground, the more doors open. You don't knock at the door; they'll open. They will choose to open, and that's when you get some incredible insight. And for me, this term that is coming a lot with nowadays with a trend on nature-based solution is forest-rich nations are the richest in the world, and sounds like a bit of a utopistic statement a few months ago, but that's becoming the hard truth. So money is flowing, and in our case in Papua New Guinea, from our project area to the country, they often use the word that we own the supply, so they won't rush. They have the traditional economy, and I can tell you it might take as long as necessary to get the right people, and in Papua New Guinea, for them to pick the right people, they will look at the people that have been on the ground, not just in terms of quantity, but without the quantity, no chance.
Thank you. Jan, I saw that you had responded in the chat. Is there anything you'd like to elaborate on?
Oh yeah, sorry, I started typing. I didn't know we would have time to answer that live. Yeah, I have a different. So I'm in Singapore, right? So I engage with local communities, but it's a different way, and nothing to do with people on the ground in the forest or so. Although in the end, I think the principles are kind of similar, especially when you talk about climate change. Like I was explaining the answer, the concept. I don't know if everybody can read it, otherwise I won't repeat it. But the consequences of the local actions are often perceived on the other side of the planet, right? And from a cultural standpoint, to engage local people, most of the time it's pretty difficult to explain to them, and it makes it difficult to engage them on that because they don't see the immediate consequence of the problem you're solving or causing, positive and negative, actually. But in the end, I found out as long as you're true to your purpose and they can feel there's a real drive in you, or a real positive drive, it will, we are all humans, and it's simple. And even when I was with indigenous people of Brazil, raising fund with them in Los Angeles, we don't speak the same language. We had a translator and everything. There was a direct communication based on this, and it's so rewarding in any way that it ends up being easy if everybody is true to their purpose, especially when you're working with indigenous people. They feel you. They feel you very well. Even there's no need to talk. So be true to yourself. It's not that hard. You just have to be open to the different thought process, and that for you it might take you 30 seconds, and there's a problem. A plus B equals C. For them, it might take 1 month because there's a different way of processing the information and digesting it. You accept that, then make it happen. It's easier.
Awesome. Anything else to add there from anyone?
I think
I'll say really quickly, I've been living in Ecuador for 13 years, and I've learned that being not from a country, and I'm curious if other people have the same experience, but my not being from Ecuador means that I'm actually not subject to a lot of very heavy colonial legacies. I mean, I have my own colonial legacies, being from the US, but being from, being from, say, Quito, where I live, and trying to work in the Amazon I would say it may actually be harder than being a foreigner, because there's all kinds of internal dynamics that I was blissfully unaware of. And so it's just kind of interesting that a lot of times I think we think of going to a place on the other side of the world and trying to work there might be super complicated, but there's actually advantages to not being from the place sometimes too.
And if I could just quickly add on to what Oliver's saying, in terms of working with local communities, the most important facet that we found in Gorongosa, beyond first and foremost just curiosity, just like forever being curious is incredibly valuable. But finding people from communities that want to work for, be a part of, and ultimately lead the work that you're doing. So I'm in Boise right now. I'm not in the park back in Mozambique, but Gabby is currently getting her undergrad degree at Boise State University. And she was the first ever female tour guide in Gorongosa. She's from a community just outside of Gorongosa. And the goal is that she goes back one day, her decision entirely, and leads our tourism department. And she's getting her business degree right now. So, I mean, that I think is ultimately the goal is, can we, maybe we're starting this, but I definitely won't be the person ending or finishing anything in Mozambique and Gorongosa. So finding those young people that are really curious and motivated and passionate and want to get involved, and immediately bringing them under your wing, because they are so freaking smart. And honestly, all of our good ideas have come from them. None of them have come from us. So I would just add that note.
Awesome, thank you. And another one for you, Eric, from Danilo. What other locations would you say require urgent additional capacity and action in the country?
Yeah, that's a big combo. Maybe I'll say, Danilo, let's take that one offline, because I could go into that one for quite some time. So I'll touch base with you there. I mean, in a nutshell, I will say everything. So I don't want to get into too many details and totally derail the conversation.
Do you have any specific expansion plans, just to speak to the end of that question, or again, too specific?
Expansion plans, I guess constantly in Gorongosa, we're looking at how can we support communities around the park. So that's like how can we get more activities and operations into the buffer zone, getting livelihoods, communities, building schools, all those pieces. And so we're always thinking about where are the communities that need it most, where we can be the most beneficial. So that's kind of our focus right now.
Cool, thank you. Well, those seemingly are all of the live questions that we have, and we're a little bit early. So if there's any additional words of wisdom for the audience, this would be a great time to share.
I guess like if we're gonna, I can give maybe some more general advice when it comes to making connections and things. We of course we started our business in the same city that our founders lived, so, and they had all the connections they needed already, so they didn't have that specific issue. But of course, operating globally means that we've needed to make connections in different locations all throughout, and working with an issue like climate change makes that a lot easier because it's something that affects everyone basically, even though everyone might not believe it. But I'd say, like, in it very generally, and it might sound like a cliche, but I don't really care, it's that the best connections don't happen in business meetings or in webinars. The best connections happen in between, in the like coffee rooms, or in the like bars afterwards, or like it's those kinds of connections that will really make the difference, I think. Even if business meetings is what enables them, of course.
Awesome, thank you. And I did, Leah just pointed out there were a couple extra questions that were dropped into the chat. Building what Eric was saying, what role do gender dynamics play in your work in the different countries, fields you work in? How does gender come into play?
Can I try here?
Yep.
One aspect of our project, which tend to sometimes be new to people, in terms of diversity in Papua New Guinea, hopefully you had a look at it on the map. There are 4 provinces which are matriarchalism, which means the land is owned by the woman of the clan. So we have one lady in the team, and we are fluctuating between 4 and 6, but they tell you stories about, and that's very interesting aspect of diversity. So maybe my point is there's so much diversity in the traditional communities that this is an angle I kind of appreciate versus sometimes maybe the more Western view of diversity. I'm a big fan of inclusion, but and that's maybe a challenge with some people that want to fit your diversity choices into some boxes. I'm careful because, for example, gender-based violence happens, but can you really fix it by saying it should be stopped overnight, or can you understand what's going on and all the taboo and all the traditions and how you can build a bit of a roadmap? And it's not really you doing it, but understand what's required. So maybe my answer to this question would be, let's be very open-minded to the local definition of diversity without compromising your own values, and that is not straightforward.
No.
Very fair point for the local reality. The other angle I can bring from the world of investing and consulting, where I'm in, just the fact of switching, like I said, I was in aerospace, aluminum, heavy industries, so obviously less female representation there. Just the switch to impact and sustainability really balanced it out. Whereas I found more and more my network is really, I think there's even more female now, because I feel that there's more female are more women are more well oriented into the long-term impact, right? And it's just, I'm a firm believer that men, we don't carry the consequences of a few minutes action and decision for the rest of the years of our life, where you live with this, right? And it's a way of there's a natural way of looking beyond. And I realized in my horizon, there's much more female representation on that position of the society, investing, consulting, and so it's sorted out by itself, actually.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they want to add there?
I'll just add that, like, look at the panelists. We're clearly not doing enough. You know, I mean, that's fundamental. You know, it speaks for itself. So, I mean, I'm already trying to hire a woman right now that is going to be a Mozambican woman that replaces me. So it's just like everything we can do, we're not doing enough yet.
Thank you for saying what I was thinking as the neutral moderator. Leah, I assume you have joined us to go ahead and move us to the announcement phase, but thank you all so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed that.
Yes, thank you so much. I think this has been such an enlightening conversation, honestly, just to give the real insight and advice. So thank you all so much for being up at 5 a.m., as you say, Pierre. And just two special announcements for our audience members. We actually have a special announcement for tomorrow. Tomorrow is World Rainforest Day, so be sure to check out all of our social media channels for a special announcement. And I just wanted to announce a new partnership thanks to the We Don't Have Time from one of their partner meetings that we had. We're able to partner with a technology company in Switzerland called Prime Computer, and they specialize in helping companies digitalize and achieve their digital and environmental solutions through designing and creating mini PCs and servers. So for all of our registrants, we'll be sending out a report on how they were able to become client neutral. They really wanted to share their success with it. They're celebrating it this year, and they want to show you how you can do it as well. So just be on the lookout for your emails for that report, as well as their contact information. And please, for the panelists, if you want to put all of your contact information in the chat, I see that there's definitely been some connections going on, which is exactly what we want. We want to build up our teams and connect with each other and really get some solutions going and moving forward as well. But thank you all so much. Thank you to Kristen for taking out the time, and to our speakers, and for everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.